In today's video, we're going to recreate Iman Ghazi's animation where he uses AI to generate an image. This right here is exactly what we're going to be recreating. As you can see, there's a great way of implementing AI images into your designs and animations while still maintaining that high quality look. Now, if you want to learn to become an advanced editor and do this Iman Ghazi style, Ali Abdaal style, Vox, Dan Koe, or even the style I do for myself that's gotten me millions of views, then sign up for the Leverage Editor waitlist. Previously, we dropped our course and had many successful students go through it, where they're able to attract top influencers who are paying them thousands of dollars. And now we're doing something new that has 100 times more value. We'll be significantly lowering the price of the course, and we're attaching one of the most exclusive editing communities along with it. So you'll have access to the course for a much lower price, but you'll also have coaches, live feedback, challenges, and job boards, and much more. So if you want to get away from being an average editor, just scraping by, accepting anything that comes across your plate, to an advanced leverage editor who's able to attract top influencers and brands that pay them thousands of dollars, then sign up on the wait list. We're going to be opening up the community very soon, but it'll be only available for 5 days. We want to make sure for those who join, get the attention they need and end up becoming very successful. So spots are going to be extremely limited. So sign up on the wait list to be notified first. With that, let's get into the video. All right, so we're here in After Effects. Just got a regular composition created. It's 1920 by 1080. You go ahead and create that on your side. But before we actually start building things out in After Effects, we're gonna hop over to Adobe Firefly to create our AI image. So I'm in Adobe Firefly, and the key to creating great AI images is being as descriptive as possible. Otherwise, you're not going to get the desired look that we are going for, and it's not going to match the animation style that we're doing. So the more descriptive you are, the better. So for this, what I'm going to type in is full body, white man, meditating, wearing blue pajamas, in room looking at camera. It's pretty descriptive. For the visual intensity, I'm going to turn it to around 70 or 80% here. I'm going to check off digital art and also check off painting. Then hit generate. And as that's generating, this should probably get something that we are looking for. Awesome. So we got some pretty good images so far. The one I really like is probably this one, although his hair kind of looks weird, but we'll roll with it. If you don't get the desired look that you're going for, just make sure you're messing around with some keywords and prompts. All right, so I downloaded the AI image and opened it up in Photoshop. So all we're going to do in Photoshop, it's very simple, is just remove the background. There's a quick way to do that. So first, unlock this. So once I unlock that, you'll see right here where it says quick actions and then remove background. Click that and we have the background removed. So one thing you could do is just clean it up a little bit by taking the eraser tool and going around some of these edges here and cleaning it up. I'm not going to spend too much time on it for tutorial purposes, but on your side, you can clean it up a little bit more. From here, I'm just going to export it and open it up in After Effects. So go to File, Export, Save for Web, Legacy. Make sure it's a transparent PNG, hit save, then save it to where you need to save it. From here, we could just import it quickly into After Effects. And before we just place him in the composition here, we're actually going to build out the scene and then have him in there last. So the first thing to do when it comes to the scene is go to New, Solid. Just make it a white solid for now because we're going to add a gradient. And by the way, forgot to mention this, project file and all the assets that go along with it. You'll be able to download that for free in the link in the description. Once again, just download it for free, no strings attached. It's in the description. All right, so we have our background here. In the Effects and Presets tab, we're going to look up Gradient. You'll see 4 color gradient. We're just going to throw that onto the background. Now we just need to change the colors of each anchor point here. I'm going to start with this right. It's supposed to be a red. If you're following along, you can just type in this color here and hit OK. Then we're going to change the pink to a blue. This blue right here is a good color code to use, and then just hit OK. Then the yellow and the green is just going to be changed to a simple white, maybe not directly white, just a little bit gray. Don't do it too much, just a touch of gray. From here, we can up the blend just a tad bit to make it a little bit more smoother. Probably like 300 is fine. 303 for now is good. The next thing to work on is this little wavy effect in the background. This is pretty simple. We're going to go up to our rectangle tool, make a decent size rectangle like so. We're going to throw a gradient on it. This time it's going to be the gradient ramp and just, toss that on there. So we want that top color to be a darker blue. So change this black to this color code here. For the bottom color, we want it to just be a slightly lighter blue. you can use this color code right here and then hit OK. As you can see, there's not really a gradient here. That's because we need to adjust the anchor points of the gradient. So up top, I see a little anchor point. Just going to drag that down. It's going to introduce more of that darker color. Might be a little bit hard to tell on your side, but it's pretty subtle, but makes a difference. From here, what we're going to throw on it is a wave warp effect. Just look that up in the effects and presets, drag that on. So for the height, we're going to change that to 15. In the width, we're going to change that to 200. Then change the speed to 0.7. That should get us that desired effect. As you see when I drag my playhead, it's given a little bit of a wavy effect. What we need to do here is pre-compose this. Otherwise, if we try moving it, it's not going to work out. So right click, pre-compose, call this wave. Pretty simple. Then we can drag this down to our desired area. Next thing to create is the text. This is pretty simple. Just go up to the text tool here, click once on the screen. I'm going to type in monk mode in all caps, scale this up. The font I am using here is called Funk. Pretty weird name, but this will be available for you to download for free once again, along with the free project assets and files. So if you don't have this font, it's there for you for free. So scale this up, just find a nice little size for it. Something like this is probably good. Maybe just a tad bit more. Now what we need to do is get this little glitch effect on it. So in the effects and presets, just look up glitch. You'll see VR digital glitch. We're going to toss that onto the text. A couple of settings we need to change here. First is that master amplitude. We're just going to change that to 8. Drop down the distort. For color distortion, we're going to change that to 24. Geometry distortion, we're going to change that to 35. Distortion complexity, we're going to change that to 12.4. And the distortion rate, we're going to just change that to 99 or just make it 100. It really doesn't matter. You can play around with the settings to get your desired look, but this should look good for now. From here, it's pretty simple. Just hit T on your keyboard and change the opacity to something pretty light, like 13% is good. We're going to add a little bit of a jitter effect to it in the end. I'm not going to add it right now because this is an effect that tends to lag your computer a bit. So I always add that stuff at the end right before I export. But now we're going to move on to the little platform that's supposed to be right here. This is pretty simple as well. Just go up to the rectangle tool, make sure nothing's selected, create a little rectangle like so. We're going to throw a gradient on this as well. Just look up gradient and we're going to do the gradient ramp. Toss that on there. Change this to radial ramp so it's more of a sphere. We're going to take this top one and drag it to the middle. It's giving us that radiant gradient, just rhyming right there. What we need to change now is the middle to this lighter gray, something like that. And then the end color to something a little bit darker like that. I'm going to rechange the start color to a lighter gray. Something like that is good. What we're going to do from here is just give it a 3D effect. This is pretty simple. We're just going to toggle this 3D option right here. We're going to hit R on our keyboard for rotation and then just mess with the X rotation till we get something looking like that. Drag it over here, maybe a little bit more like that. Make sure it's in the middle and I'm going to scale it up. And we could also just shrink this or make it more narrow. As you see, the gradient is a little bit off, so all you have to do is just hit the gradient here and I'll pull up the anchor points we have here. I'm just going to drag that one to the middle, drag this one out. Now we got our desired effect. Just going to bring this down a little bit. From here, what we are going to work on is those dials. This is pretty fun. I think I'm just going to scale this up a tad bit more. This is something you just kind of have to mess with a little bit. And now we can work on those dials. So this is not as complicated as it seems. Just go up to your ellipse tool, click and drag while holding shift. This is going to make a perfect circle. We're going to undo the fill. So click on fill and then make no fill. We're going to up the dial stroke a tad bit here. Something around 25 is good for now. We want to change the stroke color to a lighter gray. I'm just going to eyedropper tool the text here to get that desired color we want. Something like that is pretty good. From here, we just need to cut it in half. This is a little bit of a hack to do this. What we need to do is in our shape layer, if you do the drop down, you'll see this little button where it says add. Go ahead and click that and find trim paths. Once we have trim paths, we want to drop this down and then mess with the end. As you can see, we want to make a half circle here. So right at 50% is what you should type in. Then from here, just hit R on your keyboard to bring up rotation. One thing to note is we need to anchor point it before we actually rotate it. Because if you see I try to rotate it, it's not rotating from the center. I have a plugin called Motion Tools. This is completely free. Definitely highly recommend you downloading this plugin. To change it, if you don't have this plugin, it's super simple. Just hit Y on your keyboard bring this to the middle as best as you can. And then from there, we should be able to rotate it. Just hit R on your keyboard. Also hit V on your keyboard just to bring up your regular cursor. And then also hit R to rotate here. And we want a nice 90-degree rotation there. I'm going to drag it up a little bit. I'm also going to scale it down. One thing I'm noticing is that the size of this really should be from like the end of the M to the end of the N, if that made any sense, if you could hear what I'm saying. So it doesn't need to be that big. Let's scale it down a little bit more. Maybe just turn up I actually like it at 25. That's fine. Cool. So we're going to work on building out this dial first, and then we'll move on to the second one. It's easier to do it first and then copy it once we're done the first one. All right. So for the dial, we need that little bit of the loading bar to it. For this one, it needs to come from like a full bar to a small bar. This is pretty simple. Just select this shape layer. Let's actually name it too. We'll call this under dial for now. That's totally fine. We're going to duplicate this by hitting Command D on the keyboard, Control D on PC. Once we have this duplicated, we're going to throw a gradient on it. So I'm going to do gradient ramp, toss that onto our duplicated layer. For the black, I'm going to change it to a red. This color code is good. Just hit OK. And then for the white or the end color, we can change this to a blue. This color code should be good. As you can see, we're not getting the desired gradient we want. That's because we just need to find out where the anchor points are and move it. So I'm going to drag that top one down there and then this bottom one to the side here. We're getting our desired look, maybe a little bit more red on this side, just like that. From here, we need to animate it scaling down. To do this, drag your playhead to the left, all the way to the left. Drop down the contents of this shape layer, go to the ellipse, and then drop down trim paths. So we want to mess with the end percentage. What I'm going to do is create a keyframe. Just have it start off like right here. I don't want it to start off as full capacity. Then I'll move my playhead to the right and have it scale down to right about here. Should be good. What we can do is highlight both keyframes, right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease. Hit the graph editor, click on this once and you'll see this little thing pop up. Drag that to the left, should be good. And it's going to make a nice smooth downscaling effect. That's pretty good. I might want to drag it out just a little bit more. So that's how we made a little downscaling bar. From here, what I want to do is add that dial in the middle that follows along with the bar scaling down. This is pretty simple. We're just going to go to our ellipse tool, make a little circle here, nothing too big. Get rid of the stroke on it. Make the fill a bright blue. This color code should work out fine. I want to place this roughly kind of down here or near the center of the dial here or the bar. From here, we want to make a little bit of a triangle. So go to your pen tool, make sure nothing else is selected on your layer so we can make a shape. Then it's just a simple triangle. Once I have that triangle, I'm actually going to make it a little bit of a lighter blue just to differentiate it a little bit. We can drag this underneath our circle shape layer. From here, we're going to merge these two layers together by highlighting both of them, right click, pre-compose, and then call this triangle dial, then hit OK. So with this dial here, we need it to follow the bar scaling down. This is pretty simple. Hit Y on your keyboard to bring up the cursor that allows us to manipulate the anchor point. I'm going to drag that anchor point to the middle of this circle here. From here, I want to make sure we can see our bar keyframes. So select that layer and hit U. That's going to bring up any keyframe that you made on a layer. So that's a little hack for you. From there, we just need to position the dial with its rotation. So hit R on your keyboard, make a keyframe for rotation, rotate it so it's pointing in the same angle as the bar here. Jump to where the dial is then done scaling down. And the way to do that is by hitting these arrow keys on the bar. And then we're just going to change the rotation of the dial to match the angle of the bar. What we need to do here too as well is highlight both keyframes, right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease. Go to the bar graph editor and click this once, drag to the left, all the way to the left, and it should be good. Should follow it. Awesome, awesome, awesome. This is looking good. One thing to do to it is add that text in there. So go up to your text tool. This should just say dopamine. And we obviously want to scale that way down. And it's still that funk font. Crazy name though. Sounds like I'm saying something else. But yeah, so we want to scale this down a little bit. Make sure it's the right size. That's looking good. Alrighty, there's one final touch to add to this. And that's a glow effect. Now, when it comes to a glow effect, I really like using a plugin called Deep Glow. This is totally optional. It's just a little bit of a nicer glow than After Effects Normal Glow. Now, with After Effects Normal Glow, it also takes a little bit of time to adjust the settings to make it look right. Deep Glow just makes it easier to get your desired look and makes it a lot quicker. Once again, totally optional. You definitely do not need this plugin. It costs a little bit of money, but I highly recommend it if you do have the money to spare on it. So I'm going to look that up in the effects and presets, just Deep Glow. We're going to drag that on to our bar first. So we can see we have a pretty nice glow here. I'm going to just go to the beginning, mess with the settings a little bit. So the radius could probably just be turned down a tad bit. I actually like the way it looks, so we're going to keep it. And then I'm just going to copy this, Command C, put this onto our triangle dial. Obviously that's way too much, so we can just really scale the radius down and then scale the exposure down on it. Don't want anything too crazy here. All right, so there we go. There's our dial. Looks awesome. We're going to recreate the second one now, but first thing, just to keep things organized, I'm going to pre-compose the entire dial. We just call it dial. Hit OK. I'm going to go into this pre-composed layer I made and copy this, or hold shift to select all of it. Hit Command C on my keyboard to copy. Go back to our comp and then hit Command V. This is just going to copy everything we did, and I'm going to click and drag while holding shift. Holding shift's going to keep it in the same horizontal plane. I'm just going to drag it over to the right here where it needs to be. Right there, looks good. Obviously it's a little out of order, so the dials need to go under. Under dial 2 needs to be on top of under dial. And then one big thing that you notice is the gradient is no longer there. This is a pretty simple fix. Just make sure you have under dial 2 selected. Click on gradient in the effects control tab. This will show us where the anchor points are. So I'm seeing the anchor point right here. Just drag that one over. And seeing the blue one over here and drag that over. Should look good. Awesome. So for this one, we actually want it scaling up. So it's going to start off small, scale all the way over to here. Pretty simple. We just need to go to our under dial 2, hit U on our keyboard to bring up the keyframes. Change the start keyframe to where it's small like this, so around 7.0. Go over to the end keyframe and then just change that to where it's more like that. Pretty simple. Same thing for the triangle dial. Just hit U on your keyboard to bring up the keyframes. Bring the rotation to where it's aligned on the same angle as the bar in the beginning. Jump to the next keyframe, bring it to the same exact angle that's aligned with the bar. And there we have it. That's a pretty simple, quick fix for making the bar dial move in the other direction. One thing to change is the text here. So we can just call this focus, and that's pretty good. So I'm going to highlight all of these layers right here, right click and pre-compose this, and just call this dial focus. We can call the other one dial dopamine, just to keep a little bit more organized. All right, so the next thing to do is animate these dials coming in, or coming up rather. So to do that, let's just work with the dopamine dial. So I unhighlighted the other dial just so we can focus on this. This is pretty simple. I'm gonna hit S on my keyboard to bring up scale, make a keyframe for scale, drag that keyframe out to the right to around like 2 seconds for now. And then the scale, I'm just gonna, first of all, before we actually scale it down, we want to hit Y on our keyboard and mess with the anchor point. Put that right in the middle of the triangle dial. Then we can scale this down to our desired scale, right around like, I think like 45% is good. We can highlight both these keyframes, right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease, graph editor, click this once, drag that to the left, should be good, nice and smooth. Next thing to add to it is a Gaussian blur as it scales in. So in the effects and presets, look up Gaussian blur, throw that on there. In the Gaussian blur, we want to make a keyframe at the beginning where our playhead's at. Drag this keyframe, so I'm gonna just hit U on my keyboard and it's gonna show all the keyframes I made. I'm going to drag this keyframe to probably like in the middle here, in between these two keyframes. Then set the blurriness to quite a bit, to be honest, probably like 43%, and we'll see how that looks coming in. So it's a little too blurry as it gets bigger, so I'm just going to drag this keyframe to the left, and we should be good to go. All right, so now that we have this one coming in, I'm going to do the exact same thing to the focus dial, exact same steps as I did to this one here. So I'm just gonna skip ahead just for time's sake, but literally it's the exact same steps. All right, so we have both these dials coming in. They look great, but one thing I'm gonna do is just stagger the focus dial, have that come up a little bit later. All right, so now it's finally time to place the AI guy, that we have made. Pretty simple. Go ahead and find that guy that we cut out, drag him in there. From here, we're just going to scale him down. Make sure he's in the middle here. Scale him down to like 28. One thing that I'm going to add to this guy is a tint. So in the effects presets, look up tint, drag that onto him. I'm going to make the map to black a dark blue. Then I'm going to make the map to white a lighter blue. Then we can change the amount tint to just drag that down quite a bit. Just a little bit of a tint, right to 17%. Okay, another thing to add to this guy is a inner shadow. We're going to drag that onto him. We need to change a couple of settings, change it to normal, change the shadow color to a red. We could just use the red that we used in the corner here, hit OK, change the direction, turn down the opacity, kind of mess with the settings here to get our desired effect, make this a little bit brighter. And then we have it. There is our AI guy placed in here. Final thing to do is animate him and then get into a little bit of a 3D animated scene. Pretty simple, nothing too crazy. All right, so to animate this guy, we're gonna go to the drop down and go to transform, make a keyframe for position. I'm gonna drag this all the way out to the right. Make sure my playhead's to the left here and then just bring him up quite a bit. Okay, so once he comes down, the next thing to do is have him just float a little bit. So just gonna bring him up slightly, drag my playhead to the right a couple seconds, bring him down a little bit, drag my playhead to the right, bring him up, and kind of repeat that a little bit. From here, we can highlight all these keyframes, go to right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease. So some of these keyframes need to be spaced out a tad bit. Just gotta mess around to where you find the right motion in the ocean. Then from here, we're gonna create a little bit of a 3D zoom. Now, don't get too bundled up or anxious about this. This is pretty simple. I'm gonna explain it pretty easy to you. So all we need to do is right click, go to new, we'll hit camera. For the camera, we just want to make sure it's a 35mm. Make sure lock zoom is on and then hit OK. We're going to change everything that we have here to a 3D layer. So all we have to do is just toggle all of our layers. As you can see, some things are getting a little messed up. Totally fine. Things are going to be fixed. Go over to this where it says one view. Change that to 2 views. Now, if your second view doesn't look like this, make sure that for the second view, when you click into the second view, that we're changing this to right or left, whatever one matters. Just change it to right. You should be fine. And then it'll look like this. What this is just a side view of our 3D environment. So we're going to click on the background here and you can see that I can now take this background and push it all the way to the back in our 3D environment. And you see on our right side, it's getting pretty small. So what we need to do is hit S on our keyboard and scale this up to where it fills the frame. So what we're doing here is creating a little bit of a parallaxed effect. So when you have a 3D environment and you zoom in, the things that are closer to the camera or to you in real person are going to get bigger faster. The things that are farther from the camera are going to get bigger slower. So we're taking that background and putting it all the way in the back where it should be to create this 3D effect that looks natural. So we have that background there, and that's really the only thing that we need to throw in the background. Maybe the actual wave itself, we can just put that in the middle, a little in between the pictures here and the background. So obviously this also needs to be scaled up and positioned correctly. So I'm going to drag it down a little bit and it should look good. From here, we could just switch back to our one view. I'm going to just create a nice little zoom in. So on your camera, drop that down, go to transform. I'm just going to toggle all these keyframes. Makes it easy when you do that. Drag your playhead to the right, go up to this tool here where it says dolly towards cursor tool. Gonna click that and then just drag it in a little bit. We can also mess with the position of it by clicking this tool and just throw them in the middle a little bit more. You can take these 2 keyframes and just drag it to the right so it's a little bit more smooth. So one thing I'm noticing with this guy, we're getting a little bit of a weird bounce effect here from the keyframes. So I'm gonna delete all these keyframes to the right. This is a simple fix. Just keep this keyframe where he's coming in. You're gonna right click, pre-compose, and then just move all attributes to new composition. Just call him guy again. Hit OK. So right when he hits his bottom here, I'm just going to make a new keyframe for position. So hit P on the keyboard, create a keyframe, move my playhead to the right, drag him up a tad, move my playhead to the right, drag him down a tad, just like we did before. This is going to get rid of that weird bouncing effect that was happening. So all you need to do is just what we did before, highlight all these keyframes, right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease. That's going to get rid of that bounce effect. All right, now that he's coming in smooth, we need to make him a 3D layer. We're going to also duplicate him one more time because we're going to create a shadow. So now that he's duplicated, we can just call this shadow. Okay, so now that we have the shadow layer underneath the guy, there's one more thing we need to do, and that's just pre-composing it one more time. Just call it shadow again. That's fine. And then once we pre-compose it, we're going to look up fill in the effects and presets tab. Drop that fill onto our shadow layer. Change that color to a blackish gray, more on the black side. Hit OK. With this, we want to make sure it's a 3D layer, so toggle that. Hit R on the keyboard and then adjust the rotation to where it looks like this. One thing I did is that I forgot to mention is I opened up my second view to where I can see the angle. So what we're going to do is match the same exact angle as the floor here. That's the blue is the floor. And then this yellowish brownish color is the shadow. So that angle needs to match the same angle as the floor. And then we could just drag it down so it looks like it's on top of the floor. Just the angle a little bit more. Even scaling it down a little bit. Should be fine. From here, we can turn down the opacity, hit T on your keyboard, drag the opacity down to like 15%. Go to the effects and preset, look up Gaussian blur, drag Gaussian blur onto our shadow, turn that up quite a bit, just to where it looks a little bit more natural and softer. I think like 45% should be good. So that should look good on your end. From here, we could go back into the singular view, and there's a couple things we need to do. This is the finishing touches. That's going to make this really feel like a Iman Ghazi style video. There's a couple things that he throws on. One of them is an overlay and the other is a jitter effect. So we're going to do the jitter effect on the text at the moment. So to do that, look up turbulent displace in your effects and presets, drag that onto the monk mode text. A couple of settings we need to change. For this particular one, we're going to change the amount to 8, the size to 20. So now that we have these two settings here, we're going to have to add that jitter effect by just doing a simple expression. So under the evolution options, we're going to just drop this down and we're going to see random seed here. On Mac, you're going to hold down Option and click on the keyframe. On PC, you're going to hold down Control and click right here. That's going to bring up our expression. This is a fairly simple expression. All you have to do is type in time, asterisk, and then 8. You can mess around with the number, but essentially it's making a random seed for you and it's just controlling the speed of it, of how it jitters a little bit. So when we watch this back, we can now see that there's a little bit of a jitter effect applied to the monk mode. Once again, you can mess with the timing of it. If you don't like how it is too fast, like for this one, it's a little too fast for me. Just go in there, go to your turbulent displace, evolution options, you'll see the random seed. You can just change the time of it to something a little bit slower, like time 6, and it should be a little bit slower on your end. One last thing to add to this is a overlay. So this overlay, my team and I made this overlay, so you won't be able to find this anywhere online, but like I said before, we're providing you every single asset used in this project, including the project file and including this overlay for you. So make sure you download that completely free. Link is in the description. So I got this grain texture overlay. Just going to throw that on top, scale it up a little bit, and then we can change this to add. Once we have that in add, we can significantly turn down the opacity, somewhere around 50%, somewhere around 15% should be good. 15% is a little too much, so I'm going to even turn it down a little bit. Let's try 8%. 8% looks good. It might be a little bit hard to tell on your end because of the screen recording, but on your side, it should look perfectly fine. One last finishing touch. I'm just going to turn down the opacity of the text a little bit more. 8% should be good. And then it looks like there's actually a blur on it. So I'm going to just throw a Gaussian blur on top of it. Blur that up just a tad bit. You can take this Gaussian blur and put it on the top of turbulent displace. There we have it. There is our final animation. Once again, if you want to learn how to do this style or the Iman Ghazi style way quicker, the Ali Abdaal style, Vox style, Dan Koh style, and even my style that has gotten me millions of views, then make sure that you're on the Leverage Editor community waitlist. This is something completely new that we're doing. Previously, we released a course that was widely successful. We help people gain clients that were influencers and brands, paying them thousands of dollars for their edits and getting them away from the average editor and becoming an advanced editor. So we're taking everything from that course and implementing it into our new exclusive editor community that we're building. So there's going to be a whole lot more value provided along with coaching, live feedback, weekly updates, job boards, and many, many more things. So to be notified of when we're going to allow people in the community, make sure you're on the wait list. For this first time around, we're going to limit the amount of people who can join, as we want to make sure that everyone who joins is going going to succeed and eventually either, start creating their own content or working for a top influencer or brand that's willing to pay them, thousands of dollars a month for their high quality edits. So this is the best way to differentiate yourself from an average editor. So make sure you're on that wait list. It's going to be dropping in the next week or so. With that, thank you for watching this tutorial, and I'll see you in the next one.